All right, welcome back to another Wright Stew podcast. I am Paul Stewart.
And I am Brian Wright still. Paul, lucky guy, lives in Speaker Studio. So I am
He
here
does.
remotely.
Well, I'm remote as well, but I'm just in Speaker Studio.
You're like at the home base, always.
Yeah, it's true. Brian, there's a couch over here. You can come over and hang out. Or like middle school sleepover.
Yeah, dude,
We'll
life
trade
gets
baseball
me.
cards.
Hey, can we play with your little guys?
The starting lineups, we'll play starting lineups. It'll be a whole thing. It'll be a good time. So some non-middle school stories making some headlines here in the past couple of days involving gambling, right? So one with college basketball and then one with Major League Baseball. So Brian, let's start with the college basketball one. Tell us a little more about what's going on.
Hey, dude, so it's kind of crazy, that Jonte Porter was essentially admitted fraud, admitted guilt, banned from NBA basketball, tried to go play overseas. But basically, I remember his case to some extent, to where he was essentially telling guys how much he wasn't going to play, bet the under on points. Hey, I'm not going back in the game, and that got him kicked out. And there was clear communication that was showed. Terry Rozier somehow got connected when he's with Miami Heat right now. Supposedly, the NBA has done an investigation, and he's supposedly been cleared. But the incident goes back to when he's with the Charlotte Hornets. And now this same little deal has got like three little terrible schools caught up in it. And terrible, I mean, from a basketball record standpoint.
Yeah. So North Carolina A&T, Mississippi Valley State, and Eastern Michigan. And so they said there was some unusual betting activity on those games. And again, if you're betting on NC A&T, Mississippi Valley State, or Eastern Michigan, there's probably something going on that you need to check in your life, right? Or you're just a fan of the school. But they noticed unusual betting activity. And I think those things are a lot easier to check now that everything is online and booking is done. And like legitimately, you can use AI and different tools to monitor and track those sort of things. So a lot tougher now, I think, to place those under the radar bets that people probably used to get away with.
And A&T went ahead and suspended three players. I mean, indefinitely. So they found some clear wrongdoing. And I'm sure, like you mentioned, it's not like probably not a ton of money coming on either side of those games.
Yeah.
And so when you see something super heavy weighted and then it happens, it probably gets a red flag. And it's tough for coaches, right? You got portal that you're dealing with, you got transfers that you're dealing with, and now you got gambling people that are trying to get connected with players, and probably players with family members, right? I mean, hey, you're not playing tonight. Y'all are already 3-12. Hey, make sure you lose. Make sure you lose by more than 9 tonight. Well,
Yeah.
so what? And so it is. That the Alabama baseball coach got caught up in this, right? When he had a buddy and eventually put some money on the game, and he eventually got fired from that, I think last year, the year before. And so it's been some of these casual relationships that seem innocent, probably to start with, probably are innocent to start with, turn into something more over a pretty short period of time that have pretty big impacting, lasting.
Yeah. Well, that's what happened with and speaking of casual relationships, so the Major League umpire, Pat Hoberg, so he was the guy who, very famously called the perfect game in the 2022 World Series. It was 129 pitches, called each one of them correct from the balls and strike perspective. The called strikes, clearly not the swinging or foul balls, right? But was known as one of the better ball and strike callers. But struck up a relationship with an individual at a poker tournament, and then the guy would come over to his house. They created like an online account together because gambling was legal in his home state of Iowa. And then the Hoberg asked him to place a couple bets on non-baseball related things, and then his friend was also betting on it. Who the guy's actually a professional poker player as well, so that's a little tricky. So they shared,
and essentially account. A professional. I mean, he's a gambler, right?
Yeah. And so this shared account, they found some baseball activity on it, and so Hoberg claimed he never did anything, but understands the look, right? And so some of the games he actually umpired were games that were bet on. But they found no wrongdoing. They went back, they watched the tapes, they checked everything. There were some reviews during the game. Like everything he did was, by the book. He called the games as he should. I'm sure he missed a few calls, but it wasn't
Right.
just out there. So they suspended him for at least this year, and then he's able to be reinstated in the 2026 season. But here's my thing. Pete Rose was suspended forever, right? I mean,
Truth.
I don't know. I mean, that's a big soapbox for a lot of people, and umpires have, man, just a huge responsibility, and it's posted everywhere. And I know,
Hey,
man, like sometimes you forget and it slips, but at the same time, you just gotta watch it.
hey, a ton of control. You think about with our games when we played back in the day, but we see it now even with our kids playing. An umpire has a ton of control as far as that marginal 3-2 pitch that gets called a strike,
Oh yeah,
or that 3-0 count that he gives the automatic strike to that's really ball four.
that
It
drives me
changes the
crazy.
whole momentum. It can change, it can swing momentum. And I know our guys aren't anybody betting on little kid baseball, but you think about how much that can change from a higher level. They can have a huge impact and really seem like they're within the flow of the game. I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely. It's just a missed call. So obviously, the most famous example of this is Tim Donnie, the referee from the '05 through '07 seasons, who was gambling on like legitimately games that he was refereeing, and he was officiating them to move the spread one way or the other. And I think basketball, you probably have the easiest way to affect over unders or lines or whatever it is because and they graded him out during the season. They're always grading the referees and officials. And he actually those 2 years graded as one of the higher, more accurate officials because he was calling the games by the letter of the law. Because what he was doing is he was trying to go with the over. And so the best way to do that is to call a foul, stop the game. And NBA guys are making, 80% of their free throws, right? So get more points on the board, stop clock. And so you call more fouls, you get more points, no clock, no time running off the clock. And so Tim Donaghy, by letter of the law was doing a great job. But then they found out what was going on. They're like, oh, well, that makes sense that you're, and all of hers, I don't say all of them, but the majority were like the over or whatever the line was. And
well, I'd heard him interview, and this may have been him trying to justify it. But a lot of his was like, which was weird. I heard this a long time ago in regards to NC State basketball, where they're watching film on guys, and it seems like, whoever your player is keeps getting the same weird call or whatever. And so I didn't love the idea of watching film, but he said they would go into meetings, and a lot of times he'd be able to use that. Would be like, hey, Iverson, was fouled a ton of times, and it wasn't called the other night, or whoever,
yeah,
Kobe, the Lakers sent in the tape and they had been fouled, so we're going to make sure it's by the
we're
book. And so
calling
he
it tight.
took
Yeah.
that and used it. And ultimately, if you're in any of those roles, you can't have any connection. I don't think you can, because unlike football, a lot of the football referees, they have other jobs, other careers. Baseball, that is their career.
That's full time. Basketball's full time. Yeah.
No NFL referees are considered full-time employees.
Oh,
So
wow.
there's not a single one right now. Obviously, all their costs are covered in regards to
Yeah. Yeah.
going to games and that sort of thing. But as far as none of them are considered full-time referees, and you
Man,
feel like there's enough money
where they
that
should, yeah, they're doing okay, yeah. But there's a lot of downtime as an NFL referee as well. It's not like you're traveling every day. You get to the city you're destined to the day before, things of that nature. You don't have to be there, but there is a lot of talk this year too about the Chiefs getting a lot of calls and the refs being on the take and the NFL. And maybe this is more of a conspiracy theory than a referee thing, right? But a lot of people, hey, the NFL wants Taylor Swift at the Super Bowl and they want the Chiefs there and they need this and they get a few more calls and
hey, not a
yeah,
bad part-time salary though. The average NFL ref earns $205,000.
that's pretty solid.
Yeah, as a part-time gig. Yeah, where
Yeah,
everything's paid for, and obviously
double
you go to New
dipping.
York and go to some places that are highly taxed, but if that's a part-time gig, 17 weeks, and then that doesn't include guys that are working in the playoffs and eventually working
Yeah.
to the Super Bowl,
Get a
make
little
significantly
more.
more. That's just the regular season guys. So that's not bad pay. Not bad pay for a part-time gig.
Yeah, not bad. So you play college baseball and you were at NC State. So
Yeah,
you knew the other athletes, you knew the basketball and the football and things of
yeah.
that. Was that something that was ever discussed or came up in conversation at all?
Oh,
Or
it was definitely. I can remember having meetings on it, and I think it was one of those deals where, hey, probably not going to happen to you, but it was definitely discussed around basketball. It was discussed around football players, and yeah, I mean, they talked about, you know, even then they were talking about guys trying to, and kind of the way it's worked out. It seems like you end up in at a restaurant, bar, whatever, hanging out, and all of a sudden you make a friend, and all of a sudden you find out that friend is not, they had alternative motives. They knew where you
yeah,
guys hung out, and they knew how to get the in. I obviously, when we were coming through, there was no betting in regards to college baseball. That happens now, I'm sure, a lot more. There were definitely conversations around it, and I know it happened. With the basketball guys, I'm sure they were approached in different ways, and how you handle that, right? Because if now kids are getting paid, but then kids weren't getting paid. You know,
so you can make an
it,
extra 10 grand. I mean, do you remember the movie Blue Chips? That was a
it,
big, yeah, kind of a big story in Blue Chips, and they eventually kind of caught the one guy, and yeah, I think he admitted. I can't remember. I was so disappointed the way that movie ended.
I agree because it was such the best basketball scenes because they had real
Oh,
NBA guys.
yeah, like Shaq was in the movie and Penny
Yeah,
Hardaway. It's like,
Penny is the one I remember. Just look. I mean, those guys, and you've seen them live, right? But those guys just move in such a different way. I mean, it's
yeah,
yeah, really good basketball movie. Basketball action movie, if that makes sense. Not
yeah.
necessarily the story.
Well, I remember, and so in spring training too, they used to have that conversation. They would have a guy come in and they would talk about some other things too, right? Like watching how you act in different scenarios at bars and clubs and restaurants, and then gambling was always a topic that they talked about, and some of the videos they showed were kind of like really kind of cheesy and corny, and
Yeah,
but I mean, you understood the gist and kind of got the point of it. But every major league, minor league clubhouse you walk into, the first thing you see when you walk in those doors, there's like a push pin board with a big poster that talks about don't gamble, you can't gamble, all this kind of thing. So I mean, it's drilled into your head. So it's definitely out there and definitely thought. But I think now, man, with all the apps and all the different ways you can do it.
it's so easy. I mean, and
Yeah.
our state is legal. It's so easy to gamble, and I can't imagine if you get yourself in a bind where you've lost a little bit and you knew somebody that could take care of some of those problems with one event. I'm sure it is tempting, dude. I'm sure it is
Yeah.
tempting, and but it'll ruin your life, and even
Ruin.
from
Yeah.
a umpire standpoint, right? Umpires, when they're coming up through the minor leagues and stuff, they don't make a ton of money, and now they are full time, but and it feels like some of them need to be fired, if you get what I'm saying. But it's anyway, I feel like they've got a tough job. I feel like baseball has a way to make like eliminate really their ability to control games when you talk about doing electronic strike zones, and they have a way to limit that stuff,
Yeah.
but it's I'm sure it's tempting.
Yeah.
You get
Well,
yourself in a bad
here's
place.
the other thing too. Like, it drives me crazy to see all these commercials for DraftKings and all this on MLB broadcasts and NFL broadcast when it's like I don't know how you partner with such somebody like that if it's against all the rules. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. So Brian's given the dollar sign for those that can't see, right? But ultimately it comes down to that, right? It comes down to how we maximize and monetize.
Everything.
Yeah. And
And baseball, clearly, with the contracts they're giving out and the
yeah,
ratings supposedly not being great, they're finding ways to make money in all kinds of different ways. They have to be.
yeah, but that absolutely drives me crazy, especially with all the Pete Rose stuff and the Black Sox stuff way back in the day doesn't really not really a fact that doesn't feel super relevant. That was over 100 years
But
ago.
Pete definitely did feel super relevant.
Yeah.
especially towards the end where he clearly wasn't going to have any impact on baseball.
No.
Especially the last 10 years of his life, they could have rescinded that indefinite ban.
Yeah.
And
Well, here's the thing now. Like, now that he's dead, I don't want him in the Hall of Fame.
no,
If you
no,
weren't going to do it, if you weren't going to do it while he was alive, don't do it when he's dead.
I
Who
agree.
cares? Like it's and he is still in the Hall. I've never been to the Hall of Fame, but I've had people tell me he's still in the Hall of Fame. He just doesn't have a plaque. Like
Right.
his notable achievements are still honored, right? But he is not. He does not have his plaque clearly. So
Hey,
it's
so you have college kids. I mean, obviously that'll be something that we have to talk about our kids to get the opportunity to play in college. I mean, you think about the temptation for a player at, Eastern Michigan or a player at North Carolina A&T,
yeah.
just getting caught up, and and those guys aren't going to NBA, probably not going to play afterwards, and can make some
Yeah.
money. Probably not getting the NIL money either.
Well, that's the other thing too. My daughters are playing at small colleges. And we always talk about everybody talks about the NIL and the collectives and all this, and it really is a pretty narrow scope of athletes who are getting that money. There's a lot of small D1, D2, D3, NAIA, JUCO.
That ain't getting nothing.
Am I missing anybody? I mean, there's a lot of that aren't
Well,
Power
D2
5
and
big time.
D3, I think you mentioned it. I
Yeah.
mean, and really, it's probably, and I have a daughter who's going, and so I've heard some of the conversations around Coastal, which would be considered a mid-major.
Yeah.
And they're getting some, if you're talking about football and you're talking about baseball, it's getting a little bit there. But I'm not even sure if they're able to come up with enough with basketball to keep players. A lot of times that's the reason they're not able to keep players. And so there's a large percentage that aren't getting anything, but you're still able to gamble on those games. And if you find a resource, it's not a great way to make a living. You can't feel good about having to go, hey, bud, hey, if you can, I know y'all are 3-19 at this point. If y'all can,
But if you just miss some more shots, you know what, fella? I miss them anyway. I'm just doing what I do.
That's right. That's right. You're three. I mean, it is. I don't know, man. It's a bad deal. It's a bad deal for all involved. That's for sure. And it's changing, right? I mean, it's getting out there. I mean, I think it's only going to get worse, Paul. As there's more states that come online for these other universities, just to kind of put the bow at the end, it's only going to get worse, and there's going to be more of these events. I think there's going to be more temptation from referees and from umpires just because there is that temptation out there. And typically MLB umpires are full time and they're getting paid a bit more now, but it feels like some of them are at times. But anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're a young athlete out there, just stay off the apps. Don't do it. Get done with your career, and then you can do it all you want. You can gamble on you can gamble on the Pro Bowl if you want to. So make that happen.
Hey, one more thing just to add. It doesn't take like a strong bookie. Now it just takes a friend in school, right? You just need to have a friend at school that says, hey, what's the deal with this, right? I mean, that's kind of the big difference now. I mean, just every person you walk around with in campus has the ability to influence you or, know stuff about the game that it may not be known to the public. But no, you're absolutely right. Yes, stay away from it.
You're like, hey, I was hanging out with Brian Wright last night, and well, he
we both saw 3:00 in the morning.
He was on the heater.
I bet against me. I can still hit if I saw 3:00, especially if it's an afternoon game. Now you give me a 12:00 game. That I was going to bed earlier, number one. But you get me after 2:00, it didn't matter what time I went to bed, as long as the sun wasn't up. I was going to be fine the next day.
That's so funny. So, yeah, that is a pretty interesting thought kind of process.
Yeah, it's not just some sleazeball. It could be a guy in your English class that has those buddies with you, right?
Slipping you a roofie or something at the night before the game. Yeah, that's a different thing. Be in big trouble then, but yeah, man. Watch out. But anyway, well, hey, thank y'all for listening today. We appreciate it. If you haven't checked out the merch store yet, go check out the merch store. You can find a link on any of the podcasts you listen to here with us or on the YouTube as well. So check it out. We've sold quite a few. We're really excited about that. If you've got a picture of a Wright Stew podcast shirt out in the wild, send it our way. We'll throw it on the Instagram. We would love to do that and share who out there is wearing one. So, hey, thanks for listening. We appreciate it. Have a great day.
Out, go Pack.